and storage equipment, not just to protect their tools, but to protect their professional reputations. Whether it's inside or outside of work vehicles, a WeatherGuard badge means pros can trust that their hard-earned name is in good hands. Since 1968 and every day since, WeatherGuard has been protecting anything it takes to build a professional reputation. WeatherGuard, established in 1968, proven every day. WeatherGuard.com.
Everyone has a fave Wendy's Frosty flavor. And when you're choosing from chocolate or vanilla, it's not that hard. But now there's all new Frosty Swirls and Frosty Fusions. So try picking your fave from Oreo Brownie Fusion, Pop-Tarts Strawberry Fusion, Strawberry Swirl, Brownie Batter Swirl, Caramel Swirl, and Caramel Crunch Fusion. Not so easy now, huh? For a fresh way to Frosty, gotta be Wendy's. Open till midnight or later.
At participating U.S. Wendy's, hours may vary by location. Oreo is a trademark of Mondelez International Group. Pop-Tarts is a trademark of...
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
My name is Ariel. When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without my high school diploma. My entire life changed when I took a chance and got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges.
Ariel, your success proves that what I'm doing as a teacher has real meaning.
It was an honor helping you achieve your greatness. Now you're helping others achieve theirs. It inspires me.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Find free and supportive adult education centers near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
You're stepping into the fast lane on the VTRN Sports app, 93.3 FM and 1320 AM Lynchburg, or by asking Alexa or Google Home, open VTRN Sports Lynchburg. Now, take the fast lane through the topics that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
TJ, I feel like we have this scale thing often. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being very little, 10 being so fanatical that you're the guy that checks out like in-car audio, scanners, and buys the subscription to get that online. Where would you put yourself on the pantheon of NASCAR fans?
I would put myself, I would say, a 6. Like, I keep up with it, but I'm not obsessed with it to where if I miss out on Sunday, I'm not going to check out a bunch of highlights on YouTube. I'll probably just see who won the race and see how it happened.
Well, that's reasonable, TJ. And a lot of people are in that camp. And like, let's be real. Part of our job here is like for different sports, we fill in the blanks on what's going on. So a lot of our listeners would probably be closer to like the 5, 6, 7 on a lot of things. They like sports. They'll keep up with it. If it's on at the bar, they're at a restaurant, it's something to glance up at, or, you know, you're just looking for stuff in your channel surfing and nothing piques your interest. You want to watch a game and you want to know what's going on, or you check in the higher leverage moments because you know there's more intensity and more tension in that moment. Like personally, I'd probably put myself as a NASCAR fan, probably like the 8 to 9. I've never had the desire to buy like the in-car audio. I don't view myself as a lesser fan because for the most part, I consume NASCAR often on the audio platforms, PRN and MRN, the radio groups, as opposed to watching on TV. It's just the reality of having kids, balancing it out and still being able to consume it. Much like this fall, you can listen to lots of college football in the NFL for free on the VTRN Sports app and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports. But even you, we're talking about the NASCAR race this past weekend at Atlanta. For me, the answer is obviously very cool. But for you, more casual NASCAR fan, how cool was that?
That was amazing. Just going into the last lap, and there was so much at stake because if they had gotten a caution flag, Keselowski wins, right? Because if you get a caution flag, it's a couple of laps and then the race is over, right? And then next thing you know, Elliott, right, comes around in the corner, final lap. And Elliott was down 6 spots, by the way. He was in 6th place with like 3 laps to go. And he just kicks into high gear. He's in 3rd place for the last 2 up until the final lap. And then as soon as they come around the Walmart flag, you just watch Elliott breeze on by. And there's no stopping him.
Well, and the crowd goes nuts because he's from Georgia, originally Dawsonville. His dad was Bill Elliott. Awesome Bill from Dawsonville was his nickname way back in the day. And fans have gravitated to Chase Elliott. And if you think there's a dichotomy between like Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jr., there's probably an even bigger personality dichotomy between Bill Elliott and Chase Elliott. Bill is Mr. Gregarious, outgoing, very emotional. Chase is about as emotional as the banners behind us, the little padding behind the wall. Like he's not. That's not his personality, but he's still voted most popular driver in NASCAR because I'll take the lady's words for it. Your wife, your fiance, my wife thinks he's cute. Your fiance might have her own opinions on Chase Elliott as well. If you don't know, you can do a little.
She doesn't watch NASCAR, so she probably would say, "Who is that?"
Yeah, I mean, well, you can put an informal straw poll. Like, do you think this guy's cute or not?
Absolutely.
Like,
search him up on Google. Be like, "Hey, babe, what do you think about Chase Elliott?"
Yeah, exactly. Oh, he's kind of cute. Like, that's kind of the reaction that they'll give.
You should shave more often, like him.
Yeah, exactly. Might be getting the same thing if I get too close to the sun on that. But the point is the racing was great itself, and Chase Elliott winning and the popularity he has. You know, it's like Dale Earnhardt Jr. back in the day when he would win a race, and this was back before Michigan was really good, which it is now. He would win races at places like Michigan, and the quality of the race. And this was before they had the whole "was it a good race" poll done by Jeff Gluck of theathletic.com. But the fan reaction would be more favorable even if the racing wasn't all that exciting. I'll go a step further. The description you had, TJ, for what we witnessed in Atlanta on Saturday night, I thought was great because Chase Elliott was deeper in the field. And yes, there were a number of cars that were taken out and like 25 cars that were not involved in that initial big one known for the NASCAR wrecks on tapered spacer tracks. Atlanta inserted with Talladega and Daytona.
Including Hamlin and Logano, right? Because they were at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, they were in there. Both of them were involved in wrecks. Heck, the entire Penske operation, because they were running near the front. Logano, Blaney, Josh Berry, who's with Wood Brothers. I know people love them around here. They've done has been great on their own, but they are a big partner of Penske. And Austin Cindric. Like, they're all wiped out in one fell swoop. But the other interesting part, you mentioned B-Rad, Brad Keselowski. Like, he didn't have his teammates there. Zane Smith wasn't there. We mentioned the Ford Brigade. Keselowski's in a Ford, and all those drivers we mentioned from Penske or the satellite Penske of Wood Brothers, they're all Fords too. So B-Rad's without that. He's without Chris Buescher. He's without Zane Smith. And meanwhile, Chase Elliott's got his teammate Alex Bowman. And in order for Brad Keselowski to have had a chance to get in the victory as he was leading a good chunk of this race, he needed Alex Bowman to get involved. And to Alex Bowman's ever-loving credit, he didn't do it. And I don't blame him at all. Like, Bowman's better chance to win would have been to link up with Brad Keselowski, and then the two of them could potentially duke it out for a win. But it's at the expense of guaranteeing a victory to your organization of Hendrick Motorsports. And if there's one thing that seems to be valuable to Hendrick, like, look historically at their operation. Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson's a great example back in the day. They were the two alpha drivers, deservedly so, with 11 total championships between them. I know it wasn't always that way at the time, but it ended up with that. So there were other points where drivers like Dale Jr. or Casey Kane were kind of secondary in the sense that they needed to be good teammates. And part of their value is the blend of being good teammates, used in air quotes and said somewhat sarcastically for those looking at the visuals, Fastlane, Deadlane, and VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube. But part of your value is being a good teammate, which means linking up with a driver that is on your team, fair game. Passing a driver on your team, fair game. Maybe even getting aggressive with a driver on your team, fair game. But if it's not on your team, you're not going to help him out at the expense of your teammate. And for Alex Bowman to have gotten a win, which he could really use to get into the playoffs, he's not in as good of a point situation as Chase Elliott was before clinching a playoff berth with a win the other night. So Alex Bowman could have used a victory. But his standing at Hendrick, I think he was risking that as well, because if you don't get the victory and B-Rad does, and you're helping a rival at the expense of your teammate, you're not going to be cut the same level of slack that you might normally in a situation. But there's a level of strategy that was involved, and I'm fine with that, because we see these game theories, and fuel mileage is its own level of game theory, if you will. But additionally, there's the game theory of racing on these type of tracks. And I thought, honestly, TJ, it really didn't come into play until, like you mentioned, the final couple of laps of the race. Outside of that, it was really just good quality racing back and forth. Drivers would link up. You had drivers that were not doing the whole, let's just everybody go 2x2 like we're driving down 460 or 29 for those that might be doing that right now in rush hour. Hopefully not much traffic. We hope and pray that that's not the case. But for those that are on the expressway, 460, 29, wherever you are right now, if you're listening live, 93.3 FM or the VTR and Sports app for that car audio play that you might have, the side-by-side racing, good down the highway. It's safe. It means there's less likelihood that there's going to be a wreck and you're going to have to call 777-HURT or visit trostlaw.com because you've been involved on the wrong side of an auto accident. But when it comes to racing, the criteria is a little bit different. I'm not thinking safety like I'm thinking on the highway, because I don't want to call Trost Law. I love him to death, but I don't want to have to call Randy Trost and the team at Trost Law because, look, I like them, but I'd rather not have to call them for their services because I'd rather just not be involved in a wreck. No offense to Mr. Trost and the team right there. But when you're talking about racing, I want a level of risk. I want a level of give and take back and forth. And to me, the hardcore fan, having seen other races like Daytona and Talladega this year where you go, as Bill Lumberg might go from one of our great movies, Office Space, back in the day. I don't know if you've ever seen that one before, but here is what Bill Lumberg would do.
Ooh, yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
I would disagree that the racing was good on those tapered spacers earlier, but Saturday night was fantastic. From start to finish, even with the wrecks, it had a lot of everything, and it begs the bigger question. Do you want this on every single intermediate track? I don't think you need it on every intermediate track in NASCAR. I don't think you need it at Michigan. You don't need it at Kansas. You don't need it at Charlotte. The concept's just flat out not going to work at the short tracks, your Martinsvilles, your Richmonds, your Bristols. I don't think even you need it at Darlington. I think if you get the tire wear grader, which is possible at a place like Darlington, you can gain a little bit more. And I'm sure Trey and his colleagues will have more tomorrow in the morning warm-up, as well as the Front Stretch Happy Hour podcast, which Trey actually is no longer a part of. He'll be on Bringing the Heat later this week. You can check out Trey there. But I'm sure all of his Front Stretch colleagues will have opinions on that. But when I'm talking about racing, I want this. I loved what I saw. If tapered spacers makes Atlanta more exciting now than it was back when it was more just a fuel mileage race at the end, where you're really just holding your breath saying, somebody going to run out of gas. Like, there's a time and a place for that. But if that's all a track has to offer, sometimes you could do this. Fans get upset. Would it really hurt to have one more of these at Texas a year? I know me. I can't stand Texas. Everybody knows that. But would it hurt to have one more there? Would it hurt to bring back a place like Kentucky and Chicago, or maybe do something like this at a place like Nashville where sometimes you get strung out racing? I'd rather see what I saw Saturday night than strung out racing. And for me, even the hardcore fan, but I'm curious about you, TJ, the casual fan, would you rather see what you saw Saturday night, or would you rather see races where it's a little bit more strung out and you're not getting as much side-by-side action from start to finish?
I thought, for me personally, as someone who doesn't watch NASCAR as religiously as others, I felt like Saturday was entertaining enough. I felt like it was enough for me to not be on my phone as much, to not be distracted with my ADHD. I felt like it kept me in the loop and everything. And quite frankly, even without that finish, I would have been happy because, and I think maybe it's just the atmosphere of Atlanta. Atlanta has always had that atmosphere when it comes to NASCAR as well as other venues. But I thought it was perfect racing, side by side, even after the big wrecks and everything. And I loved it. I personally loved it. I don't know how you felt, especially with Ty Gibbs once again finishing in the teens. But is that his favorite spot, Ed? Like, does he just like finishing up in the 14th, 15th?
Here's the thing. Ty Gibbs is a driver that is just barely out of his teens at age 22. but it seems like he is still living in his teens based on his finish. Trey is probably going to crop and use that for quite a while here on the morning warm-up from 7 to 8 a.m., and he might even drop it into the front stretch, Bringing the Heat podcast later this week. Might be their soundbite of the week, in fact. But it's really where he is. Like, honestly, he was a driver that early in the race was near the front in the top 5. As the race wore on, it felt like he pushed the issue a little bit more. With where he is right now, he is not going to get in on points. Ty Gibbs is not. I know I'm doing a side note on my driver. Just indulge me for a second. I don't mind him going for the lead early and just continuing to push the accelerator, literally speaking, but also figuratively, of trying to get to the front of the field. I would say this. At times it's cost him. Last year at Bristol, he burned through tires quickly. This past weekend as well, where, maybe if you save the tire up a little bit, the car up a little bit, you're not getting as used up early on during those third stages, which is the second half of the NASCAR race, basically. You're not getting as used up. So you've got something there at the end. There does seem to be a level of learning that he needs to undergo. Ty Gibbs does.
Pace better. It's kind of like track and cross country more so. You got to pace yourself early in the race or you're going to run out of energy when it comes to the finish line.
Oh, for sure.
I learned that so many times running 5Ks.
It's one of the things that you learn is, you got to understand what you're budgeting in terms of your body.
Yeah.
Speaking of budgeting, by the way, and running, InsaneRadioDeals.com, enter the promo code Barbershop at checkout for $5. I don't have the sound bites ready, so please forgive me. But $5 off every single item, including a couple left, Fleet Feet Roanoke gift cards and Star City App Marathon or 10K entries. Already low prices. Now $5 off of that for every single item now through next Monday at InsaneRadioDeals.com. But you mentioned that with Ty Gibbs. I think some of it's that. But again, I'd rather that happen. I thought the race kind of lent itself to drivers being aggressive. Yeah. And to me, it was an exciting product. To you as a more casual fan, it would be more interesting. And it's why I understand NASCAR fans kind of brush back. Do we need more tapered spacers? I'd rather get what we saw Saturday night than what we've seen at a lot of other tracks this year where it's hard to pass at places like Pocono or at places like Nashville, where we were earlier this year, where you're sitting there going, no, really? Maybe we need a little bit more. I'd rather get something like this. I don't know if you can do it at Pocono because you have to brake so deep going into each of those turns on the tricky triangle. But for other tracks, sure. And leave Pocono to be a fuel mileage race and then maybe make this adjustment so that you get the good racing you got, because I thought it was fantastic this past weekend at Atlanta. Speaking of fantastic, something that you could say is fantastic for those that love video games is where we begin right now in the Fast Five at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast Five at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kinda ish. Let's start with number 5.
Well, TJ, are you a gamer by chance?
Yes, and I'm very happy with what you're about to mention right now.
So last year, they did it. They brought back college football, the video game, and they've made enhancements for this year. But now they have brought back the college basketball video game. Look, I loved video games. I won't say I love them. I enjoyed the sports video games for a small period growing up. Yeah. But over time, I was less into that. It was, you're either going to watch the game or play the game. I chose to watch it. Yeah. Plenty of people played it. And then I love being outside. Something has to give. I'd rather be outside than playing games. Not saying there's anything wrong with it. There are worse things to do in your life. Heck, half the video games out there, Grand Theft Auto or whatever it is, are not nearly as, I would think, healthy for the mind as something like this. That's just my thought. 2 cents at me, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, if you hate it and want to disagree. But the basketball video game for college is coming back this year. Look, it generates excitement around the sport. And for basketball in particular, you could use a lot of that excitement as it is. I thought the buzz around the college football video game last year coming back was really cool and bringing that level of attention. And it gets people excited for the season going forward. I am all for things that can still get younger people into consuming the sports, because finding a way to connect with and relate to them. You and I, TJ, are not the demographic, because while you're younger than I am in your late 20s and I'm in my late 30s, we're both hardcore sports fans. They've got us. It's finding the other people. I'd imagine you're over the moon and will be lining up to buy this game when it comes out.
It depends. I might wait till, the price goes down a bit. I've got a wedding to plan for after all, so.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But it seems like you have better economic sense relative to what you might be spending and what you have than Malik Beasley, former Florida State Seminole, because according to Shams Charania, the U.S. District Attorney's Office is investigating him on allegations of gambling-related activity relative to NBA games and prop bets, sources told ESPN. There is serious development surrounding this player. It's obviously that's the case. I don't know about all of them, but there's a video that's been circulating now. If you go to Twitter and just type in Malik, M-A-L-I-K, Beasley, B-E-A-S-L-E-Y, Malik Beasley, you'll see this video where it's like a 9-point game and there's a missed shot and then he's sprinting down the court to hit a layup to make it from 9 to 7 basically at the end of a meaningless, I wouldn't say meaningless, but a traditional regular season basketball game, a while back. And that has been used as documentation. And because the point spread in that game was apparently like 8.5 is where it closed, there's the thought that Malik Beasley may have had something riding on this outcome. Here's my question. Why? Like, I can understand DeJounte Porter in this particular sense because he's a role bench player, kind of, an easily recyclable player in the NBA. But even if there's the high of winning a sports bet, and look, I get into sports betting not as much more than you do, TJ.
Yeah.
I will do sports bets, and I'll have more thoughts on that in a moment. So the thing is, if you stand to make this much money in the NBA, if you like betting that much, just take your trips randomly to Vegas and go play slots or craps games or blackjack or poker or something else. If you want the rush, do something non-sports related. But the rules are pretty clear involving your sport that you can't do it. And as the Three Stooges would like to ask, I think the answer to that is pretty clearly, obviously, yes.
I just don't get it. I mean, you're a high-profile NBA player risking it all.
And I understand there's innocent until proven guilty, and that is important to remember with former Florida State Seminole and current Detroit Piston Malik Beasley. But the risk-reward proposition does not add up. Not that it does for anybody in the NBA, but especially if you're halfway decent. You can get like $20 million per year for like 3 to 4 years. Dude, you're set for life.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Like, if I'm that smart to figure it out, you should be able to as well. Meanwhile,
number 3,
the Miami Dolphins trading cornerback Jalen Ramsey and tight end Jonnu Smith, as well as a 2027 7th-round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers in exchange for safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 5th-round selection. On a raw aggregate standpoint, I kind of think Miami might have won this trade in the sense that Minkah Fitzpatrick has a little bit more time left on his career. But Pittsburgh is clearly going for it all right now without trying to lock up too much financially beyond this year because Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey want contract extensions.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh, remember, they, outside of the Aaron Rodgers modest, 1 year, $15 million, something like that contract, they're really not tied up into the quarterback market. So they can afford to try to build surrounding pieces. Yeah. I get what Pittsburgh's doing, adding these players. Just call me skeptical that when you add a lot of these free agents, it's going to come together. If anybody has been able to do that, it's Mike Tomlin from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if anybody's been able to get guys to embrace this philosophy of and get people to buy in, it's Mike Tomlin. But I do have a level of skepticism because not only the egos, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, other players that are on that roster, but the fact that a lot of them are older players too. And that's the big concern for me.
Yeah, that's a massive concern for me, as a matter of fact. You've got a lot of these players, including your holdout player, who's going to be 31 this year. It's just you've got a lot of these players that are up in age on 1-year deals. So this is the year that you want to try and get it right, because then what happens afterwards? Are you back in the rebuilding process? And that's what worries me about the Pittsburgh Steelers, whereas Dolphins, they couldn't afford to extend these guys. Johnny wanted to be a Steeler. He's going to be a great role player. Jalen, we'll see where that goes. But Miami getting Minkah Fitzpatrick and not so much having to give up as much as many people may think. They're getting rid of older players while also maintaining cap because they're already paying a bunch of players a bunch of money right now. See the 2 extension and so forth. So,
yeah. I mean, for Miami, they're in this spot where they've lost a number of guys. Christian Wilkins now trading Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and a couple of others in free agency because kind of mismanaged their salary cap and built around Tua. And as much as people may like Tua, I don't think they properly built around him with the right infrastructure. Meanwhile, earlier today at Wimbledon, we know there were a lot of bigger national stories. I have got bets on Carlos Alcaraz to win the entire event. That still is alive, barely. I had an idea that maybe he could go unscathed and never drop a set. That one lasted all of 2 sets when he lost the second set and really got pushed to a fifth setter that was 4.5 hours. It just didn't need to be that long. Kind of the thing with Alcaraz is when he's at his best, he's the most physically gifted player in tennis. But he has these staring at the clouds moments as he's just lost in distraction. And against these players like Fabio Fognini, he can get away with it. Against middle tier players, that's the one where you have to kind of be careful. He'll bring his A game against a Sinner or a Djokovic. I'm less worried about that. It's these guys that are not big enough to command respect, but dangerous enough that they could upset him. And he has these, oh, la-di-da, I'm getting distracted moments. And at some point, that focus needs to be curtailed and waned in. Madison Keys, I think I had her to win her quarter. She didn't look great today. It was 1 hour and 42 minutes for a 3-setter, which in women's tennis is really long. She kind of pulled it out, but don't feel great about that, or the fact that I've got her at 19-1 to win Wimbledon for the women's side. Took a couple of long shot flyers, Alicia Parks and Haley Baptiste, to win their quarter. I just put half of what I normally put, $15 instead of $30 on each of them. They might not even win a match, but I think women's tennis, it's like taking out lottery tickets right now is kind of the way you play that. One of the cool stories, though, is one that we will get to in UVA's Chris Rodish. Played Christian Garin, who's actually been a pretty good player in tennis so far. 7-6, 10-8 in the first set, and then 6-4, 6-4. That's a respectable straight sets loss for Chris Rodish. Qualified his way into Wimbledon, making his debut for UVA, gets Christian Garin, who's a more well-established tennis player. Look, it'd be cool to have seen him maybe get a set or maybe get a win, but you're right there in your first set. It's kind of neat. Now, Virginia's best chances of winning at an event like this generally are on the women's side, especially with someone like Danielle Collins, who's been one of the key cogs there, Emma Navarro as well from UVA on the women's side. But it was kind of cool to see this, and something that we will discuss when we return here in the Fast Lane. Jerry Ratcliffe will talk UVA. Before that, Shane Metlin on JMU and the new look Sunbelt, perhaps. And then after that, David Cunningham of TechSideline.com. All of that still to come here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app, and as that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Get more at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer serving Southwest Virginia and surrounding areas for over 50 years. With more selection, more value, and more finance options. Plus, your trade is worth more. Get the best selection with more Hondas, more Hyundais, all your favorite makes and models. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now. That's way more than any other dealer in the area. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume all in one location on the Motor Mile. The Used Car Superstore is your one stop for cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Plus, Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is easy on the Motor Mile with financing options for every budget. We finance your future, not your past. You're a valued customer and not just a number on the Motor Mile. Get more with straightforward pricing and more inventory arriving daily. Over 900 vehicles on the lot ready to choose from. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Do you know what a cold climate heat pump is? They're a new generation of heat pumps from Tara Lee Mosley that provide substantially more heat than traditional heat pumps, even when it's 5 degrees outside. This means your electrical auxiliary heat runs less, saving you big time on your electric bill. And with the recent spikes in electric utility rates, that's crucial. Plus, these new heat pumps qualify you for a $2,000 federal tax credit. Contact Tara Lee Mosley for more info on the new cold climate heat pumps.
At Big Boys Guns, one thing we've learned over a decade serving Central and Southwest Virginia is that you value the freedom to choose. That's why you'll find the largest selection of firearms, silencers, reloading equipment, ammunition, and AR-15 parts, all under one roof. And if it's not in stock, the BigBoysGuns.com web store shops warehouses on a live feed, so you'll know exactly when your product is here. Come see us on Route 460 in Blue Ridge and BigBoysGuns.com. That's Big Boys with the Z, Guns.com.
Have you looked at your home's exterior lately? Do you see faded siding, paint peeling, and wood rotting? Windows that are impossible to open and close and gutters falling off? Call Collins Siding and Windows to transform your home's exterior and save you money on energy costs. Dreaming of a new porch or sunroom? Collins can do that too. Since 1989, Collins Siding and Windows has been transforming homes in Central Virginia. Roofs, windows, siding, gutters, porches, decks, and sunrooms. They can do it all. Call Collins Siding and Windows today, 434-525-6307.
It's not too late to register for the Virginia Commonwealth Games at Liberty University and around Lynchburg. Athletes of any age or skill level can participate. Choose from over 35 sports, including tennis, softball, archery, and bowling. Win a gold, silver, or bronze medal, and join us for the opening ceremonies and tailgate party festivities. Register today online at commonwealthgames.org. That's commonwealthgames.org. It's the Virginia Commonwealth Games, brought to you by Kroger, Bedford Area Welcome Center and Tourism, and Campbell County Economic Development.
This fall, Saturdays belong to the Hokies.
Oh, and these Hokie fans are going crazy here in College Town, USA.
Lane Stadium, electrifying, iconic, the best in college football.
Oh, you'd have to be here to believe it.
Built by tradition and fueled by passion.
Breaks free at the 10, to the 5, touchdown Tech.
Where every roar and every cheer brings you home. Are you ready to start jumping? Tickets on sale now. Visit Hokiesports.com.
Hi, I'm Matt with Fleet Feet Roanoke. I've enjoyed working with Ed Lane in the Virginia Talk Radio Network, but when they sold their Roanoke station, I was skeptical the partnership could still provide value. Months later, I'm thankful that Ed took the time to meet with me, discuss the right solutions, and a plan to invite his audience to Fleet Feet Roanoke. Now we're able to build a connection with that audience thanks to Ed's creativity. Stop by and see us at Fleet Feet Roanoke to learn more. We'd love to get to know you.
Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com to start growing your business.
Don't miss the huge July 4th sales event going on now at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford. Save up to $11,000 off MSRP on a new 2025 Ram 1500, or save over $7,500 off MSRP on a new 2025 Jeep Wrangler Sport. Plus, we have over 230 incredible pre-owned vehicles in stock with big discounts. It's on the July 4th sales event, only at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford, 1750 Independence Boulevard, MagicCityBedford.com.
The grit of the sidewalk crunches under your shoes as you walk up the driveway to your newly renovated home, and as you lean against the new Chevy Suburban in your driveway. That's when you realize that listening to VTR in Sports changed your life. Your business messages, visually written, resonated with our audience and brought you new relationships and clients. That's the power from partnering with VTR in Sports. Access that power, then enjoy the fruits of our labor. Start now. Email info@virginiatalkradionetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech Hokies men's basketball. Start jumping. This is your home for the Hokies. VTRN Sports 93.3 FM and the VTRN Sports app. Hi, this is Zach Mackey, the voice of Virginia Tech men's basketball. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
I guess we're kind of going to focus on this team to start covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth. A look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the JMU Dukes.
With not with Jerry Ratcliffe. That's my pump fake, inaccurate. It's like throwing a pick six at the beginning of the show. No, with Shane Metlin of DNRonline.com. We'll talk with Jerry Ratcliffe about UVA in just a moment. Shane, good to be speaking with you. I was so focused on realignment, I'm thinking like 10 steps down the road to stuff that's crazy. Meanwhile, we appreciate your time in the Fast Lane. Hopefully you can sympathize with the craziness of realignment. JMU and the Sunbelt schools lose Texas State to the Pac-12. You have a great piece up about remembering how this really works when it comes to realignment, and it's more school presidents than athletic directors. How much is that important now, especially when people may be wanting clarity on what the Sun Belt might do next, but not expecting it, and fans should not expect it, you would think, to happen overnight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important because athletic directors, the commissioner may have different priorities than every single president in this conference. And, to be honest, too, like there's some turnover at the presidential level around the conference, too. App State's president hasn't been in office very long. JMU's new president takes over tomorrow. ULM's got president's only been there for a few weeks. So, we don't necessarily know what any of those people think about what the conference should do next. So I don't anticipate, a quick move necessarily, partially because of that.
I don't think of this as necessarily realigning chairs on the Titanic, because I don't view JMU or schools that are outside of like your big power structures as guaranteed being on the outside. But is realignment right now more of a temporary answer until what many people think will be the next big shockwaves that might come in about 5 years around 2030?
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. I think that's part of the reason there's a little bit of a divide between the East and the West in the Sun Belt, or at least there seems to be, as far as like how quickly they want to move and how big of a move they want to make. I feel like, the teams in the East are probably a little bit more in tune with, hey, something could happen in the ACC, something could happen in the American, and then we're looking at a big shakeup, which might either mean adding a higher quality team to the Sun Belt, or maybe a spot in a different conference for teams like JMU, ODU, App State. You never know. So I feel like that could be part of the reason why it seems like the East teams are more intent on, hey, let's wait and see how things play out versus, some teams in the West seem to really want to add a team like a Louisiana Tech, where that's going to cut some costs for them. That's going to make travel easier for them. And there's going to be an immediate benefit to that for some of those schools. But for the conference as a whole, I'm not sure the East schools are on board with that quite yet.
Shane_DNR Sports on Twitter and at DNRonline.com. Shane, great to be speaking with you today in the Fast Lane. We appreciate it. We'll have different angles to this when we return next week in the Fast Lane, including what might happen with, the Sun Belt, who they might add or might not add.
Yeah, I mean, everything could change by next week, so we'll wait and see.
It is the gift that keeps on giving, at least to we in the media that want stuff to discuss this time of year.
Now to UVA.
With JerryRatcliffe.com founder and contributor Jerry Hudie Ratcliffe, and we are grateful for Shane's time today in the Fast Lane. Just a little confusion toward the end right there. Meanwhile, confusion. Fans seem to be confused about what the steps might be with Ryan Odom, particularly a potential addition. You have a piece at JerryRatcliffe.com, Hudie, as we welcome you back into the Fast Lane. Scatter shooting, which are great. These are just different musings and nuggets you hear around UVA athletics. One of them is on the Rick Carlisle visit, the Eastern Conference champion and NBA runner-up Indiana Pacers coach returning to UVA. I was struck by how he's been around at some of these press conferences, notably Tony Bennett's resignation. He's been present with Ryan Odom as well. Fans seem to be speculating that potentially more could be at work. Maybe at some point he would take on a role at UVA. Is that premature? Is that just fans getting excited at a Virginia great being back on campus? What do you make of Rick Carlisle's increased presence around UVA men's basketball, particularly over the last year or so?
I think it may be premature, Ed. I think he does own a home here. He bought a home here or is building a home here. So I wouldn't be surprised that he would retire here when he gets ready to hang it up. But I think he's the guy that when he's retired, that he's retired. I think he would be somebody that would still like to have a presence around UVA and help, in any way he could. But I don't see him taking on a meaningful role in the athletic department just because he has a great love for his university.
That's a good perspective, and you certainly are plugged into a lot of former UVA greats, and Rick Carlisle would be classified amongst those. Players that would like to etch their name in lore at UVA in the future, 7-3, the ratio of transfers to incoming freshmen for Ryan Odom at Virginia. Is that the ratio you would expect in future years, or is that more heavily slanted towards transfers versus incoming freshmen and just one returner in Elijah Gertrude? Is that ratio because it's a new staff and that may be a little more evenly balanced in prior season or in future seasons?
Yeah, I think it's sort of an oddity, Ed. We have seen the last couple of years before where a lot of the players have entered the portal and the coaches have had to start from scratch from the, getting players from the portal. But I think Ryan Odom is a guy who wants to build more of a base. And I know he's already made like a couple of dozen offers to high school kids, classes of 26, 27, and even 28. I think he'd like to have guys who will come here and stick around and only use the portal when he has to. It was a necessity this time because he only had one scholarship player returning, Elijah Gertrude. But I don't think he wants to do that in the future. You never know because of we don't know what deal is going to happen with the portal and NIL until they get some formal guidelines for all that. But I think until they do, it's hard to guess what might be in the future. But I think his preference would be to have the ratio the other way around.
Guidelines. We're waiting for more in terms of what goes on with Virginia. Of the 10 additions that were announced to the Virginia basketball roster, Teaster, and I'm trying to get his pronunciation down, and it's like I vary it up, but I don't think it's ever the right one. He's withdrawn from the NBA draft, and you reported a couple of weeks ago that he was on Virginia's campus at jerryratcliffe.com. Hootie, any more clarity? Are you surprised he wasn't on the list of additions, or is this just bracing for the fact that he might be there, but between visas and everything else that's going on right now, just globally, but also in college athletics, that he may be there, but it may be a little bit more choppy in terms of the process?
Yeah, we really don't know where he is right now, but I think the only holdup at this point, from what I gather, is the NCAA, and he's just waiting to be cleared to be able to join a team. And I've been told that could happen within the next week or two. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens as early as next week, but there's no roadblocks in terms of UVA and with his admissions or anything. I think he's just waiting on the NCAA to clear him and to let people know how many years of eligibility he has remaining. I would guess he would have 2 or 3 years remaining, but that's to be determined.
We will find out, and we'll keep it updated to Jerry Ratcliffe on Twitter and jerryratcliffe.com. Hootie, good to chat with you. Thank you again for your time today here in the Fast Lane.
Absolutely, Ed. We'll see you soon.
Now to the Virginia Tech Hokies.
With the real D-Cunna, at least that's what he calls himself, or we call him, on Twitter and Instagram, David Cunningham of TechSideline.com, more formally, as we know of him, back in the Fast Lane. David, good to be speaking with you. It's appropriate last week you did your Q&A on the basketball offseason, because since that time, we've had 2 additions for Virginia Tech Lady Hokies basketball with Kaleo Anderson, who is one of the top 75 prospects in ESPN's rankings, and then Ariana Harris-Mott, who is part of the Boo Williams circuit program over in the 757 area. Is this continued positive additions, or are these continued positive additions for Megan Duffy's squad at Virginia Tech?
Hey, Ed, great to be with you. Yeah, I think so. Anderson kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. She did visit, but she's from Washington State, out a little north of Seattle. For all I know, she could have seen the Hokies play in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 a couple years ago and found Virginia Tech very interesting, because the Hokies, advanced to the Final Four, of course, out in Seattle. And then Harris-Mott came in yesterday. That's 2 commits in 4 days. And Anderson's a top 100 kid, as you said, really, really talented guard at 5'11". And then Harris-Mott, she's, from Maryland, the Columbia and Laurel area. She's 6'4", really, really good post player. And this is the kind of time that high school recruiting picks up, especially for women's basketball. And you're seeing Megan Duffy and her staff capitalize on it. And I think they've done a really good job in their 2 seasons. You can even include, that transition year, if you'd like, last offseason coming in after they were hired. They've done a really good job of getting in the right kids, and getting in the right additions. 2 of their 3 members of last year's class, or the kids that'll be freshmen this season, were top 100 kids. You got another one now in this class already. 3 of 5 isn't bad, and they've done a pretty good job, I think, with the portal as well, supplementing that. So, yeah, I think they've done a really, really good job, and interested to kind of see how all these pieces flesh together.
David Cunningham, the real D-Con on Twitter and Instagram, and TechSideline.com. David, pivoting over to another sport that you cover as well, not as much maybe as you did back in the day, but that's Virginia Tech baseball. Doug Wiley comes in from Xavier. He'll be the new pitching coach for John Szefc's squad at Virginia Tech. Can he stabilize things, particularly as seasons progress, where it felt like, and it seemed like from watching and listening to the games on the VTR and Sports app, your home for Virginia Tech baseball, that there was an erosion almost in terms of performance later in the seasons?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a guy who, he's got pretty deep experience. He's a former pitcher, both at the D3 level and at Arkansas. He started as a GA on an Arkansas team that went to the College World Series. He's been at Xavier for the past couple of years. He's worked in the Chicago Cubs organization. A lot of experience, Ed. I mean, this is a guy who you want on your school, on your side, on your team. He's going to be the new pitching coach for the Hokies, as you said. And the interesting part is going to be, what does the pitching staff look like itself? And I think the Hokies are in pretty good shape there, especially because they had a handful of guys last season that were banged up, that were injured. I look at Madden Clement as one of the top arms that the Hokies have. He only pitched once or twice before missing the entire season with injury. They've got 2 or 3 or 4 other guys like that. I think this is going to be a pretty strong pitching staff, and it looks like Wiley's already bringing over a guy from Xavier or 2 maybe, and they're getting some guys out of the portal. It seems like they've done pretty well in the transfer portal so far. So I think, this is a good hire. I think he'll be able to kind of stabilize things. I think the bottom line is you just have to have enough arms and enough depth in there. And Virginia Tech hasn't necessarily had that last couple of years, maybe dating back to that 2022 team that was really, really good. They're going to go through injuries throughout the year, but if you have a little bit more depth, that allows you to kind of string guys along. And when you get into a little bit of tough situations, when you get deep into the postseason, even in like an ACC tournament, for example, it's not like you feel like you have to, rotate through guys very, very quickly, because guys can't last very long, right? It's a complex thing, of course, and quality depth is important. But I think Wiley's going to be able to add a bunch of different layers in that area. And I'm interested to see what he does with the pitching lab. He did a lot of really good developmental stuff at the minor league level for the Cubs in terms of using pitching lab elements and stuff like that.
David, great insight on baseball and women's basketball for Virginia Tech. When we return next week in the Fast Lane, who knows what next we'll discuss, but we appreciate your time going a little bit off the beaten path today here in the Fast Lane.
Yeah, appreciate it, Ed. Talk to you soon.
David Cunningham with us here to wrap up part 1. When we return, part 2. John Manson, Talon Peter drafted. Will we get a new VTRN? Will we have a VTRN sports employee drafted to be the new PA announcer at Liberty? Those are topics we will cover next here in the Fast Lane on the VTRN Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTRN Sports.
Don't miss the huge July 4th sales event going on now at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford. Save up to $11,000 off MSRP on a new 2025 Ram 1500, or save over $7,500 off MSRP on a new 2025 Jeep Wrangler Sport. Plus, we have over 230 incredible pre-owned vehicles in stock with big discounts. It's on the July 4th sales event, only at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford, 1750 Independence Boulevard, MagicCityBedford.com.
Car insurance rates are rising rapidly. That's no secret. It's because the cost of medical care for those who are injured and the repair and replacement cost of damaged vehicles is skyrocketing. But what can you do about it? Hi, this is Judd Gardner with Gardner Insurance Solutions in Lynchburg. We've been helping Central Virginia drivers purchase the coverage they need at affordable prices since 1993. Talk with us before you pay again. We represent numerous companies and have many cost-saving strategies. Gardner Insurance Solutions, 434-316-5433.
Sandstone architecture, melodic music, wonders of the world. They're staples of Egyptian and Mediterranean culture. But you didn't have to travel thousands of miles to experience it. Just drive to downtown Cairo. Enjoy food from the entire Mediterranean, blended with the best Egyptian recipes. That means fresh ingredients cooked on a charcoal grill. Downtown Cairo staples include $5 heroes, and build your own Mediterranean bowl. Experience the taste of the Egyptian and Mediterranean world in your own backyard. Downtown Cairo, Business 29 in Madison Heights, and the Grays Mill Shopping Center in Forest.
As a mom, I want to enjoy my time with my family and not energy-draining, time-consuming projects. That's why I trust Executive Maintenance. When I need a handyman, I call Executive Maintenance. When I need lawn care and landscaping, I call Executive Maintenance. And when I have a big project like gutter cleaning and pressure washing, I call Executive Maintenance. Guard your family time. Trust Executive Maintenance for all your house jobs. Visit executivemaintenancelynchburg.com and call them today so you can spend time enjoying your family as I do.
When you're a discerning gun owner, you value knowledge and honesty. That's what you'll get at Big Boys Guns. With over a decade serving Central and Southwest Virginia, we make the complex easy. Our team experience can help with firearm transfers and 100% electronic process for silencer ownership that is done in-house. And when you know firearms, you know it's honest. That's why we offer accurate appraisals and low prices. Looking to buy, sell, or trade? We make it easy at Big Boys Guns on Route 460 in Blue Ridge.
Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. What's going on, Colt?
What's going on is customized training and tutoring. We've got a lot of requests. People come in with specific needs. They need to learn Excel. They need to learn Word.
Okay.
And we sit down with them one-on-one and offer tutoring and training in 1 hour sessions.
And that's been pretty popular then?
It's been very popular. They come in with a need, focused on what they need to accomplish, and we to get it done for them.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of us is through our number, 434-525-8590, or you can contact us on our website at wefixstupidcomputers.com.
The thrill of Liberty Flames football returns this fall.
Give it to us. There it is. Touchdown, Liberty.
Be at Williams Stadium in Lynchburg when the Flames begin the chase for the Conference USA Championship. See all 6 home games, including a battle with in-state rival JMU on September 20th. Cross-conference games against New Mexico State, Delaware, Missouri State, and Kennesaw State. Season opener August 30th against Maine. Season tickets and full schedule at lufootball.com.
The 4th of July means food, family, fireworks, and baseball. Join the Lynchburg Hillcats as they face the Salem Red Sox July 1st through the 6th. The Freedom Celebration kicks off on Thursday with a patriotic jersey giveaway. Friday the 4th will feature our annual fireworks show, the largest in Lynchburg. Then on Saturday, we've got another giveaway with our patriotic hats. First pitch on Saturday and Sunday is scheduled for 2 p.m. Come celebrate America by getting your tickets today at lynchburg-hillcats.com. This fall, Saturdays belong to the Hokies.
Oh, and these Hokie fans are going crazy here in College Town, USA.
Lane Stadium, electrifying, iconic, the best in college football.
Oh, you'd have to be here to believe it.
Built by tradition and fueled by passion.
Breaks free at the 10, to the 5, touchdown Tech.
Where every roar and every cheer brings you home. Are you ready to start jumping? Tickets on sale now. Visit Hokiesports.com.
When planning a summer trip, you probably have a checklist. So if you're driving, here's a safety checklist. If you see flashing lights on the side of the road, slow down and move over. If you're in an accident and can move off the road, try to find a safe spot like a parking lot. And if you're on the shoulder, it helps to have your flashers on. Just some friendly tips from our family at TROSLAW. We hope you never need us, but if you do, we're here to help at 777-HURT and TROSLAW.com.
Hi, this is Bill Roth, voice of Virginia Tech football. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
I swear we don't copy and paste, but we will get some good insight right now in part 2 of Covering the Commonwealth.
It's time for your teams and topics. Covering the Commonwealth. A look at teams and topics from around the Commonwealth. Let's start with the Liberty Flames.
John Manson, a SeaofRed.com founder, with us here in the Fast Lane. John, great interview, 3-part series with Ian McCall, Liberty Flames athletic director, that dropped last week at a SeaofRed.com. Of course, it's conveniently at the same time that we interviewed Ian McCall. That interview is up, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts, including Facebook Live and YouTube, to check that out. John, biggest takeaways as it speaks to the future of Liberty from your chat with Ian McCall. If you had to pick 2 to 3 out of that bunch, what are they?
Ed, good to be back with you. Always good to catch up with Ian. Summer is kind of the time to do it, right? So
Yes.
It makes sense to for both of us to be checking in with Liberty's AD. But he's always very open and honest. Has been with all the media, including ourselves, and asked him about realignment. That's obviously getting heated up again, and I think Liberty's content being in Conference USA currently, but keeping their eyes open to see what happened. And I think with the House settlement, you'll see some continued movement around the G5 or what could become the G6 with the new Pac-12, and if some dominoes fall correctly, and of course Ian didn't come out and say this exactly, but I think the AAC could be a league that would make a lot of sense for Liberty in a number of ways, and I think that's one that if you see a few dominoes fall, that a couple spots open up, Liberty would be on the short list for them. So that's not necessarily something Ian said, but kind of we talked about realignment, and he said Liberty. He thinks the Flames still have a path upward, upwardly mobile, and really wants the program to continue to make strides nationally, like softball did with making a super regional, and football did, back in 2023, making it to the Fiesta Bowl, and hoping that more and more sports continue to make news nationally, because the more eyeballs you get on the athletic program, the more likely you are to get into a bigger and better conference.
John Manson, JC Manson, his personal Twitter, A Sea of Red, Twitter, or just .com to keep up with John's work as he's with us in the fast lane. Had a great weekend, great week off celebrating his anniversary. Congratulations to you and Morgan, by the way, on that. That's awesome. 19 years strong. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that, Ed.
Indeed. And two lovely girls. John is living a totally different life between me with two boys that are about to turn 7 a week from today versus two girls. We love them all the same, but it's a totally different world. So if I seem a little bit more zany, I hopefully have a viable excuse. Speaking of zany and crazy, Talon Peter, was he on your radar to potentially get drafted as he was in the second round of the NBA draft on Thursday night?
No, definitely not. And, you mentioned I was off last week, had some R&R before we get ready to do it again with another athletic season upcoming, and was not even watching the NBA draft, and, knew it was on, and was going on about my evening, and woke up in the morning to several Twitter notifications, several notifications and text messages, and of Talon getting drafted by the Pacers, and it definitely came as a shock. I mean, we saw that he had 7 pre-draft workouts, and the Pacers being one of those teams, and we saw Indiana seems have an affinity to Liberty players, and Darius McGee. Did some work with them and was on their G League affiliate there before you went overseas a year ago. And so they took a shot on Talon, which is definitely surprising, and it's interesting, and it's history for Liberty. I mean, you talk about, NFL, the players that Liberty's had drafted there over the years, and there's been a few, and Malik Willis went in the 3rd round a couple years ago, and Eric Green even went in the 1st round back in 1990, but Liberty's really never had a player drafted in the NBA. Yes, they had 2 back in the early 80s, but that was a much different time when the NBA draft went to 10-plus rounds, and they had two guys drafted late in those rounds. And so it's 40 years without a draft pick, and the first time in the Division I era that Liberty's had a player drafted. And for it to be a guy like Talon is, you can see the upside in him, right? Like his efficiency numbers were kind of off the charts, and obviously his athleticism kind of flashed throughout the season. And I know a lot of people make conversation about him coming off the bench, and how can a player that played for a team like Liberty, Conference USA, didn't even start, get drafted. And I think that's a little should be taken with a grain of salt, because he was coming off an injury last summer, didn't get to practice a lot in the lead up to the season, and there was even talk of him potentially missing the start of the year, but he was ready. So he obviously came off the bench early, and then as the year went on, he got better and better and adapted to the team and the system, and started putting up a lot of big numbers and scoring a lot of points and doing it efficiently. And Coach McKay, he's talked about having a conversation with him, and Talon said, about him going in the starting lineup, and Talon said, no, I'm doing just fine coming off the bench. The team's doing well and winning, so why change anything? Don't fix it if it's not broken, right, as the old saying goes. But I think that that type of attitude is something that probably paid off for him, when looking at making it to the next level. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, it's obviously not an easy path for him to make an opening day roster, but he would certainly have his shot. Summer League kicks off here. I think the Pacers play the first game on July 10th. I think that one's on NBA Network, but you can catch most of them there or ESPN Plus. And so it'll be fun to to kind of follow him and see if he can, make it work, and at the least, work out maybe a two-way deal with the G League and maybe get called up and get on an active roster. It's not something that we've had happen much at all, and certainly no time recently. So a huge honor for Talon, one of the biggest individual honors as far as professional, achievements go, getting drafted in the NBA draft. Like I said, it hadn't happened in 40 years. 1985, Cliff Weber went, but now Talon Peter gets to add his name to that list.
Look at you getting your Dame on. Damian Sordelette, the whole historian who covered the Lynchburg Hillcats, Lynchburg sports, and most notably Liberty University for newsadvance.com, who remembered all these wonderful bits of information. Now, John Manson is gracing us with that today here in the Fast Lane on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville Southside, and the VTRN Sports app and ask that smart speaker open VTRN Sports. John, last one for you. I'm doing no such favors in my own quest as I have hacked up a storm today, coughing and sneezing with somehow summer colds. But Liberty accepting applicants for football, men's basketball, and baseball PA announcer openings. It wasn't my idea, but some listener added Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter, and we posted it there and on Instagram as to whether or not I should apply for that position. The question is not me, but will you, will Chad Hassan, would Richie Longshots come back down just for that explicit honor?
No, you definitely don't want to hear me behind that mic. Richie Longshot's on there. I know you had him on last week. He's always entertaining. He might be fun to be on there, but kind of like we had to do with him on our podcast when he was first coming on as a co-host. Got to have that mute button nearby because you never know what he might say. But he would be a lot of fun. But Ed, I'd love to see you give it a shot and see if we can. You love the Bel Air and LA, and see if you can make that thing go from behind the mic.
Your endorsement means a lot, although I have a feeling, and I posted this at Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter earlier, that if I got the job, somehow there might be folks that want to give me the old Uncle Phil Jazz treatment where Jazz gets thrown out of the house all the time, and that way Bel Air would not be nearly as welcoming. Who knows? We might do it. Our listeners can vote in the meantime. Should I or shouldn't I apply for the PA announcer role for football, men's basketball, and baseball at Liberty University? Fastlane Ed Lane on Twitter and Instagram. John with a heartfelt endorsement that means so much, and we thank you for that today here in the Fast Lane.
Thanks for having me on, Ed. Have a good night.
It's always our pleasure to chat with John Manson.
Now to NASCAR.
With Steven Stump of FrontStretch.com. Some people call me the Slim Reaper when I walk into a business. It's like the Grim Reaper, the guy that you don't want to see. I hope that's not the case for all of them, but for those that don't advertise with the Virginia Talk Radio Network, it might kind of be that way because you're missing a great opportunity. Meanwhile, whatever the reverse of that is Steven Stump when he is at Atlanta Motor Speedway. I am not going to call it by its sponsor name because they are not like Terry VW Subaru or Sheeler Motor Mile, who are great partners of ours at the Virginia Talk Radio Network, and I am petulant like that. Steven, thank you for your time today in the Fast Lane. You were there for the 3-wide finish last year. Now you were there for the thrilling Saturday night race. Are you the good luck charm Atlanta needs to deliver every time?
I wouldn't say so because the next gen car, especially at night, is consistently put on some of the best racing in the series and easily the best super speedway racing. I think my one worry about last night, or not last night, I think one worry about the race was when there was that huge wreck early on, and I was worried that the rest of the drivers would just ride around, try and save their cars, to get to the end of the race. And that was not the case. Drivers were still being aggressive. Drivers were still making moves. Things got intense at the finish, and it was, and Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman found each other at the perfect time right at the end of the race to take the win.
You mentioned the overall caliber of the car and the challenges with it. Do we need more of this? Tapered spacers, and I'm not saying at places like Kansas or Michigan or Charlotte where the racing's been really good. Pocono, it's probably logistically impossible just with the tunnel turns and the triangle-like turns that are on that particular track. But would it help at a place like Texas? Because everyone knows my thoughts on that.
Oh, way better than Texas. Yeah, way better.
Or even bringing back a place like Kentucky or Chicago to add flavor to those tracks, because Atlanta, I thought it was thrilling from start to finish.
My take on, the reconfiguration they did to Atlanta and what the racing is like is that it's awesome, but I think if every track becomes Atlanta, it'll get pretty stale quickly. I think Atlanta is its own thing. It's a great thing. It's been able to put on great races there when Daytona and Talladega just really haven't with this car. But I think if we're playing to the next gen car's strengths, though, I do think Chicagoland and Kentucky coming back just the normal mile and a half, like Kansas and Las Vegas and Charlotte, you name it. I think just having those back would just be beneficial for the schedule overall. They don't necessarily need to be Atlanta, though.
Last one for you, Steven, and he's at Steven_Stumpf on Twitter and Instagram, as well as frontstretch.com, hanging out with us today in the fast lane. How big of a boost was it that not only was the race at Atlanta good on Saturday night, but Chase Elliott got back to victory lane too?
What I will say is that when I was out doing interviews after the race, that was definitely the loudest cheer I've heard in person. So it was a very, very popular win. Fans were very happy. He was obviously taken aback by it. I think his wins overall is great, especially since, he's NASCAR's most popular driver. It had been over a year since he last won. There's been questions swirling around him, Alan Gustafson, the 19, if a change needs to be made, but now he gets the win, locked in the playoffs. He's second in points, and I think it definitely serves NASCAR well to have its most popular driver in the hunt to win.
Steven, it serves us well to get your insight at frontstretch.com and at Steven_Stumpf on Twitter and Instagram, as well as today in the fast lane. Love it when we can catch up. Congratulations on being a good luck charm for Atlanta. At least we'll call it that the case when it actually is good racing, and we won't blame you when it's not. Thank you for your time in the fast lane.
My pleasure.
Steven Stumpf with us here in the fast lane.
And last but not least, or maybe least, the Lynchburg Hillcats.
Jason Prill, Jasprill 19, with us here in the fast lane. Jason, great to be speaking with you. It was exciting. 2 weeks ago, Lynchburg Hillcats beat the Carolina Mudcats 2-1. They win the championship in the first half of the Carolina League. Since then, though, it seems like it's been a little bit wobbly. How much of that is championship hangover? How much of that's the fact that it's 2 weeks on the road and people may not think about it, but Augusta and Charleston, South Carolina are two of the more hot and humid places in what has been a very hot and humid stretch. How much of it is players have been called up, and therefore that does impact the way a roster can continue to build on that success?
Well, Ed, I think it's a combination of everything that you just mentioned. Plus, Augusta and Charleston are also tourist destinations. These guys have the mornings off. They go play golf. They go and do stuff. It can be very easily to fall in a trap of distraction. And we're coming off of a championship celebration like Hillcats had a few weeks ago, taking the first half crown. There's going to be a hangover. There's going to be a letdown. There's going to be a little bit of a fluctuating period. They've done a pretty good job to kind of steady the ship coming in for these next 2 weeks here at home. But there was definitely a little bit of that. We just won. We have nothing to play for a little while. Now we're just going to coast for the time being.
Now they have a 2-week homestand. The flip side of that road stand, of course, fireworks later this week with Independence Day coming up are always the excitement for folks, and you can get tickets for these games on the 2-week homestand at insaneradiodeals.com or lynchburg-hillcats.com to get your tickets for that Independence Day event. They sell out quickly, so just keep that in mind. But you look at the next 2 weeks. How big of an opportunity is that for the Hillcats to kind of get things righted and maybe have a chance to stake their claim in the second half?
I think it's a huge opportunity, especially this first week against Salem. The Red Sox have not had a good season to this point. Lynchburg's had their number, not just this season, but last year as well. It's a great chance for the Hillcats to get back on track, get their foot kind of going forward again, pick up some momentum in the month of July. Obviously, right now, you already have the playoff spot clinched. You're not too concerned about your record, but you don't want to go in limping. You want to go in with confidence. You want to go into the playoffs having won a bunch. And even with a team that might be piecemeal together from what was in the first half, you want to have that momentum carrying all the way through the season. And so this is a huge opportunity to try and build on what you've done. You're coming back to a place that may still smell a little bit like champagne from your celebration. And so that's a huge motivator. That's a huge boost to return to the confines of your own apartment, your own locker room, your own clubhouse. And that should get them back on track.
We get on track with Hillcats Insight from Jason Prill. Jason, thank you for that today in the Fast Lane. We greatly appreciate it and look forward to chatting again.
Absolutely. Anytime, Ed.
Jason Pearl with us to wrap up the Fast Lane. That does it for us today. We appreciate your time, and we will be back tomorrow. TJ and I, at least. You're here tomorrow. Is that tomorrow? Or no, Trey is tomorrow. Trey's here tomorrow. You're here later this week.
Yes, sir.
We look forward to that. In the meantime, TJ _ Wilkerson 8, Twitter and Instagram, Fastlane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you listen to podcasts, including Facebook Live and YouTube. We're back tomorrow. Now on to VSiN's Make It Rain in progress.
I could see him after this year, and when the contract is done, I could see at the end of the day